Who is the goddess Inanna? Inanna, also called Ishtar, or the Queen of Heaven. She is a goddess associated with love, beauty, sex, desire, fertility, war, justice, and political power. Her abode is in heaven. She is associated with the planet Venus. Her symbols include the hook-shaped knot of reeds, the eight-pointed star, the lion, the rosette, and the dove. Her consort was Dumuzid the Shepherd, but there were many others to come as well. Her father is either Enlil or Enki, but her mother is unknown. In Greek culture, she was known as Aphrodite. In Hinduism, she was referred to as Durga. The Canaanites referred to her as Astarte, and the Babylonians called her Ishtar. But Inanna is an ancient Mesopotamian goddess. She was originally worshipped in Sumer and was later worshipped by the Akkadians, Babylonians, and Assyrians under the name Ishtar. She was called the Queen of Heaven and was the patron goddess of the Eanna temple in the city of Uruk, which is her main cult center. Inanna was worshipped in Sumer at least as early as the Uruk period, circa 4000 BCE to 3100 BCE. And prior to that, she had very little cult following prior to the conquest of Sargon of Akkadia. During the post-Sargonic era, she became one of the most widely venerated deities in the Sumerian pantheon, with temples all across the region of Mesopotamia. She was especially beloved by the Assyrians, who elevated her to become the height in their pantheon, ranking her above their own national god Ashur. Inanna or Ishtar is alluded to in the Hebrew Bible, and she greatly influenced the Phoenician goddess Astarte, who later influenced the development of the Greek goddess Aphrodite. Her cult following was strong and continued to flourish until its gradual decline between the 1st and 6th centuries ADE in the wake of Christianity, though it survived in some parts of Upper Mesopotamia as late as the 18th century. Inanna appears in more myths than any other Sumerian deity. Many of her myths involve her taking over the domain of other deities. She was believed to have stolen the mess, which represented all positive and negative aspects of civilization, from Enki, the god of wisdom. She was also believed to have taken over the temple Eanna from An, the god of the sky, along with her twin brother Shamash. Inanna was the enforcer of divine. She destroyed Mount Ebi for having challenged her authority, unleashing her fury upon the gardener Sakulentida after he raped her in her sleep, and later tracked down the bandit woman Belula and killed her in divine retribution for having murdered her consort Dumuzid. In the standard Akkadian version of the Epic of Gilgamesh, Ishtar becomes smitten with the demigod Gilgamesh after watching his heroic actions, and she asks him to become her consort. Gilgamesh rejects her and does her in a particularly vile way, bringing to light how poorly she's treated all of her previous consorts and the fate that befell those who had given themselves in a loving way to her. This enraged her, and at her rejection she went back home to heaven and implored Enki to unleash the bull of heaven to kill Gilgamesh for the insults. And after much prying, she ultimately got her way, and the bull of heaven was unleashed upon earth and caused great destruction until Gilgamesh and his friend Enkidu were able to slay the beast. It's also believed that during this battle that Enkidu suffered the wounds that ultimately would claim his life, and would later fuel Gilgamesh's drive to attain immortality. Now, Inanna or Ishtar's most famous myth is the story of her descent to and return from the Sumerian underworld. Now, many see this as an attempt to usurp the domain from her older sister, Ereshkigal, the queen of the underworld. Now, in order to reach the underworld, Ishtar had to pass through 7 very specific gates, and remove a symbol of her power. Now, the queen of the underworld surmised that Ishtar had come to usurp her thrones, and she brought her before the 7 judges, who ultimately found Ishtar guilty of sedition and summarily struck her dead. Now, 3 days later, Ninshubur pleads with all the gods to bring Inanna back, but all of them refuse except for Enki, who sends 2 sexless beings to rescue Inanna. They escort Inanna out of the underworld, but the Gala, the guardians of the underworld, drag her husband back down to the underworld as a replacement. Now, Dumuzid eventually is permitted to return to heaven for half the year, but his sister, Inanna, remains in the underworld for the other half of the year, and this explains the cycle of the seasons. Many of the stories of Ishtar paint her in less than a favorable light. We see her in her role opposite Gilgamesh, where she proves herself to be vain and cruel at times, and her love ultimately means nothing, and him exposing that is what brings about her feelings of emotion. And you see the way that she reacts. She unleashes the bull of heaven, and this would cause a great deal of destruction on earth in her attempt to get back at Gilgamesh. We also see that she has a reputation for usurping the thrones of other deities, and that's something that the Queen of the Underworld recognizes when she comes to her domain, and ultimately she was right. So it's amazing though that Ishtar throughout this day is still one of the most famous names of any deity, as famous as Zeus or Isis or Thor. Ishtar was a powerful force not only in Sumeria, and the myth spread through other societies from the Phoenicians to the Greeks, and still remain active in Western society to this day. If there are any who are worthy of our respect and our worship, it is this goddess.